National Arts has been made possible by Low Real Estate Group at Path Realty, proudly serving the Shepherdstown community in West Virginia for nearly a half century, providing commercial, leasing, rental, marketing, and consulting. Hi, I'm Mike Baker, and welcome to National Arts. This Emmy-winning television series features some of the finest visual and performing artists in the tri-state area. Season 2 promises to be equally rewarding as we feature highlights from chamber music festivals, classical artists, poets, playwrights, cartoonists, stained glass window artisans, even a Broadway actor. So without further ado, let's get started. Danielle Corsetto is a professional cartoonist who lives and works in Shepherdstown. She spent most of her childhood writing and drawing comic strips and started her first long-running web comic series, Girls with Slingshots, online in 2004. She also dabbles in caricature, figure drawing, watercolor, and teaches how to create comics to all ages and skill levels. Danielle is now working on a graphic novel called Elephant Town that takes place in Shepherdstown. This has led to numerous watercolor and marker studies of the town she calls home. Danielle, you are a professional cartoonist, but this wasn't just a lark. I mean, this was something you wanted to do at a young age, right?
Since third grade, yeah.
Third grade? Do you remember what the inspiration was? Was it a drawing class or something, or just one day you put pen to paper? What was it?
Yeah, I'd been reading comic strips since I was a little kid. My grandfather used to love reading them to me, from the newspaper. So I loved reading them and having them read to me, and I loved drawing and I loved writing. And then in third grade we had an art teacher that asked us to do a comic strip, and I was like, this is my language. This is how I best communicate with the world. So I didn't think that I'd be able to turn it into a job, but I hoped that I could.
The hardest part, though, is if you write it as a gag strip, as you describe them, when there's a little gag or there's a little punchline at the end, is always trying to come up with the script, not just the cartoon, but the script. That's difficult.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
For certain.
And does that just call to you, or do you find it somewhere inside?
I don't know. It's funny. I've taught so many kids how to do gag strips now, and it's like this natural. I know they don't even really read newspapers anymore. Like, nobody gets the newspaper, rarely. So I don't know where they get it from, but it seems like it's a very natural feeling to have this like setup and and a punchline at the end. I don't know. It's definitely natural for kids.
Well, the kids you must have a sense of humor. Not only you have to have the artistic talent to draw, but you need the sense of humor combined, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you ever laugh when you write them?
Yeah, usually I laugh while I'm coming up with a comic and I write it down, and then you're going to spend the next 3 to 4 hours working on this, and 10 seconds in you're like, is this going to be worth it? Because, as soon as you make the joke, you think it's funny, and then as soon as you start working on it, you're like, is this really worth 4 hours of work?
4 hours just for a simple strip.
Yeah.
You started actually with something called Girls with Slingshots. And now you've sort of moved on from that. What was it about that initially fascinated you, do you think?
About doing Girls with Slingshots? Or, I mean, I was just trying to, at that point, it was 2004, I was still aspiring to become a syndicated cartoonist, but the web was becoming much more hospitable towards doing comics that you really wanted to do without having to worry about target audience, target age, anything like that, censorship. And so I just wrote whatever I wanted to, and I was in my 20s, so it's very, very 20-something, very college humor. Yeah, I don't know. It felt a little bit like writing autobio. It was my friends and myself, the jokes that we would make. So it was just things that I thought was funny and things that my friends thought were funny, and just put it naturally into a comic strip.
I think the title speaks volumes.
Yeah. What do you think it means?
So, well, girls fighting back, girls saying what they really think, girls having a place in the world. I mean, it's sort of symbolic, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely, I was a bit tomboyish when I was a kid, so it was, that was kind of where it came from, just wanting to, at that point, I think things have changed quite a bit, but at that point it was a very male-dominated career too.
Yes.
So.
Well, that would give an interesting perspective to have a woman drawing a woman, wouldn't it?
A little bit different.
I mean, there's some intrinsic value in that. Yeah. But you did revisit it in 2018. You had sort of a retrospective of sorts. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, it was just every 200 strips I would put into a soft cover, and I was self-publishing for the most part. Basically, I had somebody else take care of the distribution after a while and the packing and shipping and everything. But at the end of it, I ended the strip in 2015, and I just took a very, very long time to come up with a large compendium of all of the strips plus a few extras. And there are some places that are inspired by Shepherdstown, which is where I live. So I wanted to put some photos of the actual town in the back as well. So I really took my time and put this huge compendium of all of the strips together in this huge set of volumes, 2 volumes.
Right now, I was going to say, right now I'm just kind of sketching to get used to drawing some of the characters for Elephant Town, which is the book I've been working on since May of last year. And it's a graphic novel, so it actually takes place in Shepherdstown, where I live. And it's kind of about small town life, and mostly young small town life.
Where did the name come from?
So if you know the story about the elephant that's buried in town from a long time ago, there was, actually it's right next door to here, a circus that went through town in I think the late 1800s, and an elephant just dropped dead, and they were working on, I think, excavating the church and had the hole already for it. So they were like, well, we could just roll the elephant into there. This is how I remember the story. I'm sure there are probably more correct versions, or, you know, I could be getting little details wrong, but I really struggled trying to come up with a title for this book, and I like the idea that I don't fully know what the story is behind the elephant, and I feel like that kind of encapsulates small town life, is the rumors and stories that get kind of warped and changed from person to person, and that's a little bit of what the story is about. This is about 4 different characters, main characters, that live in the same house but don't know each other. It's just kind of been broken up into apartments. And so they each have their own separate story, completely separate from each other. But they can hear each other through the walls because it's a thin-walled house, apartment. If this was a movie, who would play, and I don't know enough about pop culture anyway, but I don't actually hear voices, I don't think. Like, I don't hear what they sound like. I just hear their inflections and, you know, there's the sarcasm or, you know, alternate meanings that they're trying to hide, that sort of thing.
What inspired that? Being in this town, or just generally, as you said, the people that are behind the scenes here? Is that what that inspired that?
So part of it is just small town tendency towards gossip, and I'm not. I'm also guilty of this. But it's also, I think, national. I'm sure probably international as well. But I see it, you know, in this country, especially right now, that people are making assumptions about people they don't know through what little they know about them.
Yes.
So that's the idea. Is my friend moved into this house that's actually in town, and he could hear everything happening in all the other apartments, and he could make up his own stories. We both could together. You know, it's very fun to make up stories that are kind of hyperbolic and, you know, out of what is really going on, most likely. So it's kind of what the story is about, is this game of telephone and this made-up stories in your head about what the next person is thinking when you really don't actually know.
That's mostly what I'm working on right now. I'm occasionally doing sketches and studies of architecture throughout the town, because I'm not used to drawing backgrounds, and it's a very background-heavy book. So I'm doing a lot of sketches and watercolors and such of the old buildings here. What this is useful for is doing the thumbnails. So this is mostly finished work, but you can see there's a thumbnail here, and it's actually somewhere over here, I think, yeah. So I'll sketch it out here, I'll take a photo, bring it in here, and then I can move things around and enlarge them, or make them smaller, or shift the perspective a little bit. A lot easier on there than having to redraw it on paper. So using it for layouts, and then after that I will use them for pencils. So that's that same page. And those are the pencils. And what I wound up doing, actually, do you want to see the original so I can show you how I do the back? I don't know if this is too much information for you, but I think it's in this guy. It's the last page I did. All right, so I applied grays to Miranda's pages because she has this more kind of photographic vision of the world, and I want people to see that through her pages. So she's got more, you know, more feeling and more grit and a little bit more traditional work done to it. So these are drawn on paper, but what I do is I print the pencils on the back backwards. And that way I can work on a light box this direction. If I have a light box behind it, it'll show, you know, faintly the lines that are printed on the back, and I can just ink them from there. And that way I can focus more on the quality of the line instead of where the line needs to go. So it gives me a little bit more control over just focusing on that, which is nice. So each of these pages has that pencil file printed backwards on the back of them.
It's been very beneficial for you to have the internet because you have thousands of followers.
Yeah.
And they not necessarily hang on every word, but they hang on every strip. What's next in this person's life?
Yeah.
Do you sense that?
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
get input?
Yeah, and actually I was much more public before I ended Girls with Slingshots. I kind of needed to pull back a little bit and focus more on my work than that interaction, because it is easy to get drawn into that. It's fun and it's very validating.
You want to make Elephant Town into a website, and you're building that, correct?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
There's not much to tell except that I've just been dragging my feet, but it will be a lot more. Right now it's being published every Monday in very small chunks, whatever I can handle, on Patreon and on Instagram. And Patreon is, I'm kind of trying a new business model where my patrons, the people who are just supporting me by small micropayments every month, are actually acting as a publisher essentially for this. I was hoping it would work, and it is working. But it's meant to be in a book, and the reason why is that each character has their own kind of color scheme. And as you hear something happen, a bump behind a wall in one chapter, you'll see what caused the bump in a different chapter. And I think it'd be a lot more satisfying to flip back and be like, wait a minute, isn't that the same? Okay, this happened a few pages before, or a few chapters before. Right now, it's very difficult to see those connections because it's coming out so slowly and because you can't go back in the archives very easily. With the website, hopefully it'll be a little easier. We'll have a good archive system. But eventually, it's really intended to be written or read as a book.
Mm-hmm. So you actually can subscribe to this. Mm-hmm. And every Monday, with your cup of coffee, either before you go to work or if you're at home, working at home, you can see what you've drawn each week. That is a tremendous undertaking to come up with product every single Monday.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm used to doing, when I did Girls with Slingshots, it was full-time, and I was doing it 5 days a week, and they're full color, and it was a lot of work. And I was also promoting myself. So, you know, everything that a syndicate would normally do or a publisher would normally do, I was doing for myself, and that was a very large part of the business. So I'm used to that speed, and now I feel like a failure because I'm only putting out maybe 2 or 3 pages per week per Monday. So to me, that seems like not enough, but they're very involved pages, and I am drawing backgrounds, which I'm not used to drawing. It takes twice as long. Mm-hmm. So while I feel guilty about it, I have had friends remind me, you know, this is a lot of work, and we know what you're doing.
So Patreon is kind of like a way, it's a platform where I can share the work that I'm doing. In this case, I'm sharing like 2 to 4 pages of Elephant Town at a time every Monday with people who subscribe, or you can call them subscribers. It's kind of a loose model, but people can basically just send in $1, $2, $5 a month, and yeah, there are different tiers. I keep them pretty loose, though. Mostly, you're just seeing the comic every week as I'm producing it. So I did that instead of trying to find a publisher and getting an advance that would barely cover me, and having an editor tell me, well, we should really make this shorter, or maybe you could use an editor. I don't know. We'll find out by the end of it. But I preferred the idea of having it kind of crowdsourced. And I have a readership already from Girls with Slingshots, my old project, and I just figured it would be more fun to do this and a little bit more personable. Occasionally I'll send out like a poll just asking people who are following me and supporting me, something drops off of a ledge. Is it this, or this? Which one do you want it to be? And it'll be something that's very benign and, or seems benign. I won't tell you the context. You can vote on it, and whichever one wins goes in. And so later on in the story, you'll see the thing that you chose that you vote on come into the story. You'll realize that you actually did have a little bit of a hand in it, which I think is a little bit more fun. I'm actually doing a 48-hour comics challenge this weekend. I was actually thinking, when you said you were going to come over that weekend, I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool, but I would be so distracted. So I'm going to be trying to make a 24-page comic in 2 days, in 48 hours. And I'm not writing anything beforehand, so it's going to be completely fresh. And I'm kind of excited about just making something off the walls fantasy that I don't normally do. So almost everything I do is slice of life comedy.
I feel like I've kind of established, luckily, what I wanted to do since I've been 8 years old already, and now it's kind of free game. I can do whatever my heart desires. I think I'm already being remembered quite a bit as someone who brought out a lot of subcultures. In Girls with Slingshots, it was a lot of, it was a very gay advocacy kind of strip, but also just different subcultures you wouldn't necessarily think about. There's a deaf character. Now I'm not going to be able to think of any of them besides the deaf character, but there are a lot of people whose lives you may not have known about, and I did a lot of research to make sure that I was being authentic about those characters. And I have received a lot of emails throughout the years, and I still do, from people saying, thank you so much for opening my eyes to this person this world that I would not have thought of otherwise. I'm much more understanding towards that subculture now, and that's really all I needed. So now it's just free space.
Sheila Brannan is one of the foremost stained glass artisans on the East Coast. Sheila's stained glass creations are original designs which are brought to life by her use of patterns, textures, and a unique understanding of color and light. Her classical training and evolution as an artist brings sophistication, simplicity, and excitement to her glass. In addition to her representational designs and major stained glass installations, her signature creations have evolved into brilliant abstract collages, incorporating found objects, copper wire, glass chunks, hand-blown glass, antique bottles, and always a splash of whimsy and joy. How did you gravitate toward stained glass? What prompted you to get involved with this?
Well, I was walking down Atlantic Avenue in Rockport, Massachusetts, and there was a circular house that Samuel Chamberlain used to rent to paint, and there was a little window with the foil the film that you could get from Woolworths that looked like, and it was a lightning bolt. It was, oh, I have to work with glass. I mean, it was just, I have to do this. So I bought books and glass and tools and taught myself.
This is a privacy panel. It's actually going to be in a house allowing light in, but creating privacy. And it's been evolving and changing, and originally it was going to be a gold board or gold ring around it, and I decided I really liked what the moss green does. I'm waiting for a shipment of moss green. We still haven't decided what this background is, but I'm just methodically cutting the border, and I use the copper foil method, which means each piece is wrapped on both sides with copper foil, and that's what my solder sticks to. When I'm ready to solder, I'll be using solder. I use flux, and then I use solder along the line, the seams where the copper is. And before I do that, one of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building a reinforcement in the panel, which, because it's large, it'll keep it from bowing. So that will fit in the seam as well. This is a project for a friend who's been very patient. This is a transom that spills into a side light. So we wanted to be sure the colors flow. So there's my basic drawing, then we start playing with color. I have the glass. We're starting with the transom. I have the board set up. So this will be next. This is a piece that it's actually an old window sash, and the design is actually 6 single panes. but the design goes from panel to panel. And it was, I gave it to a friend. It hung in his dining room, and then when he died, I decided it was going to stay with me. So it's one of the ones in my collection of things that I don't sell. This was a significant piece because it was one of the first pieces I did that has a free-form edge, instead of things being contained and framed in a rectangle. So it was a big step towards a new way of doing glass for me, and that is kind of a free form. The center is a hand-blown rondelle from Blenko. It's just molten, luscious glass. I tried to buy some more, and they're not doing the designer glass anymore, or at least not right now. I think another victim of COVID, so they're hard to get. But I just love their liquidity of their glass and build around it. This is another reoccurring theme, is the moon and a tree. Mostly it's winter. I've tried doing some with leaves, but I think it's more interesting to see the stark tree in the moonlight. This started out with a base of a wine bottle. Then I did the wire work and created a fish. It was hanging over a friend's pond. Someone came to me with a wine bottle that was the bottle they were drinking when he proposed. Here's another example of what I do with scraps of glass. I call them shards. And this is what I do with wine bottles. I score them and break them, and I never know how it's going to break. And then I fill in with chunks of glass. This is a deeper green, same idea. And I score it. It's always kind of exciting to see how it breaks.
I mean, some of your things are abstract, but some of them are very delicate, like a bird in flight or something. I mean, this takes an artistic sense, an ability to sketch and draw and conceptualize, and then match the glass, the colored glass with it. This is not an easy process.
No, and a lot of times the glass determines what I'm going to do. You know, I'll see a piece of glass, and it's like, oh, you know, the design emerges working with a particular piece of glass. I did a panel maybe 3 feet by 6 feet. It was actually a series for the Hospice of the Panhandle. I did glass for their meditation room.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's certainly, you have to think about supporting it, and installing is tricky, and sometimes I'll have other people install and I leave the room. Well, it was probably the most profound experience in my artistic career, was to be a part of this, creating this building and having this design evolve. Instead of it being in a window, they chose it as a light box, and they didn't want a light box built out, so the builder built a second wall. So it's lit from behind, and we wanted something that was non-denominational. It was something that would just give people an opportunity to rest their minds and hopefully give some comfort.
Where does this come from? Is this some kind of does it come from the artistic sense of the individual? Does it come from some other creative area in your brain? Where does this whole unification of bringing these concepts together come from?
I don't know. I think it's just a very personal relationship with the design. Mm-hmm. And certainly if it's doing something special for someone, the involvement of them, I'd like very much to have their input and have them be part of the process. Mm-hmm. I love the process. I think it's fascinating, the creative process. To start off with just, I keep my little sketches, you know, and then the drawings to size, and watching it evolve. But to finally get it up and see it with light. And that's so far in the process. I mean, you work on it, and I think when I soldered a side of a piece and I tilted up to get ready to flip it, just for a second I get to see the light coming through it. And it's such a delight to be able to paint with light, literally.
Thank you for joining us on National Arts. I hope you enjoyed meeting Sheila Brannan and Danielle Corsetto. Until next time, remember, art was meant to be appreciated, so you be a part of it.